What's up, fight fans? We got a badass fight event for you guys. This week we got Kevin Vallejos versus Josh Emmett headlining the generational Apex card that we will all be tuning into. Now, jokes aside, though, this is actually pretty solid for a UFC Apex event, especially a modern-day UFC Apex event, to be specific, because this could be a lot worse, alright? We could have another WMMA event headlining the card, for goodness sakes. But regardless, though, I am going to be talking about every single fight that's going to happen on this card, including the filler ones, which I'm going to be real with y'all. I don't think anybody cares to listen to me yap about, but I'm going to cover it anyway, alright? Starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Alright, so first off, we got the first fight of the night, Piera Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes, aka my dinner break. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think many people care about this fight. You know, we will be tuning in on 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to watch Piera Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes. I'll be real, I didn't do any tape study for this fight, so you know what I'm gonna do here. Alright, long time viewers of the channel know this. For any unranked women's fights that aren't really interesting at all, I like to flip a coin on this one, alright? And if it lands on heads, alright, if it lands on George Washington, I'm gonna go with Piera Rodriguez. And if it lands on tails, I'm gonna go with Sam Hughes. It landed on heads, I'm going with Piera Rodriguez. Now, moving on, we got Elijah Smith versus Su Young Yu. This is tough. This is really tough for me. I'm gonna go with Elijah Smith. You know, I love to be the biased guy for all my Korean brethren, but I just don't think Su Young Yu's got this in the bag. Now, I will say, Su Young Yu is actually pretty good. You know, upon rewatching his Xiao Long fight, he did outstrike Xiao Long, even though his wrestling got negated. The problem I see for Su Young Yu is that, first off, he's at a massive speed disadvantage. And I think Elijah Smith is going to crack Su Young Yu with the harder shots. Yes, Su Young Yu can push a pace, but that's if he creates a lot of scrambles. And Su Young Yu, although his wrestling's not bad, if he doesn't get it, he'll just quickly disengage and there's back to standing on the feet. And even if he can take down Elijah Smith, he's very positional based. Like, he doesn't force any scrambles out of Elijah Smith. He doesn't really threaten any submissions as of recently. So I don't think Su Young Yu has the best style of beating Elijah Smith, where you have to force Elijah Smith to scramble over and over again in order to slow him down. But otherwise, I think Elijah Smith is going to be the cleaner striker in this fight. He's going to pick apart Su Young Yu. I would love to see Su Young Yu win, though, alright, just because he is Korean, and I am biased for the Koreans, but unfortunately, I don't see him winning this fight. So I'm going to pick Elijah Smith to win this fight. I'm going to say 29-28. Maybe Elijah Smith dominates him and then possibly gets a finish. He hasn't really got a finish, though, outside of Toshiomi Kazama, who is awful. And the way he got the finish, it was by Rampage slamming him with from the triangle. I don't think Su Young Yu is really going to go for that. I think Su Young Yu is going to go for takedowns, fail them, stand on the feet, throw a couple of shots. But it's going to be clear that Elijah Smith is the much faster fighter with more finishing capability. And I think the UFC is going to value that more. Especially because Su Young Yu, maybe he lands the more shots, but I just don't really see him damaging Elijah Smith very badly, which is ultimately what you're going to have to do. You need to actually put some serious threat in front of Elijah Smith's face, or you got to make him scramble nonstop. And Su Young Yu, although he's pretty good, I don't see him doing either one of those things. Alright, moving on, we got Bia Mesquita versus Monse Rendon. I'm going with Bia Mesquita on this one. She's actually pretty solid in the grappling. Now, I do worry about her on the feet because she hasn't been tested there as of yet. But I do think her grappling is almost elite level. All right, I do think that you need to be a ranked caliber fighter in order to defend the grappling of Bia Mesquita. She just dominated Irina Alekseeva, who isn't exactly the best, but if you're getting submission wins, like, via dominant grappling, not just, like, fluking a triangle out of nowhere, it shows me that you have the potential to just outclass a lot of the unranked women's bantamweight fighters. And Monse Rendon, Outside of her fight with Alice Pereira, she hasn't really impressed me. She's lost both of her fights outside of that. And I do think that Mesquita will just impose the grappling on Monse Rendon over the course of 3 rounds and possibly get the submission like she did in her last fight. So yeah, I'm going to go with Mesquita to get the job done. And I think it's going to be a pretty one-sided dominant decision, if not a submission in the later rounds. Moving on, we got Luan Lacerda versus Hecher Sosa. Hecher Sosa is making his UFC debut after winning his fight on the Dana White's Contender Series last year. I will say, while Hecher Sosa didn't look the best, I do think that his opponent was pretty good. He's like a very tricky opponent. He's like 6 feet tall at bantamweight, which you don't really see in this division. Luan Lacerda, on the other hand, I don't know if he's UFC caliber. Like, his only win throughout his entire UFC career is against Simon Oliveira. Welcome to the club. Everybody has beaten Simon Oliveira. And I don't find Luan Lacerda impressive outside of his fight with Simon Oliveira. Hecher Sosa, I don't know how good he is, alright? He did beat the guy that he fought on the Dana White's Contender Series pretty comfortably, using a lot of wrestling and pressure boxing. I don't think he's going to get a finish here, though. I don't see the best finishing capabilities from Hecher Sosa. But based on what I've seen, I do think that he's a lot tougher than Simon Oliveira. And Luan Lacerda took Simon Oliveira to the 2nd round, which is kind of a disgrace. So yeah, Hecher Sosa, I believe, is going to use his physicality. He's very strong for the bantamweight division. He picked up the 6'1" guy a lot of times and just dunked him on his head. And I think, although he's not going to be able to do that as easily to Luan Lacerda, I think the physicality is going to be apparent here. And I think that Hecher Sosa is either going to win a boring decision or maybe a ground and pound TK in the later rounds. But either way, Hecher Sosa should win. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer than the odds maker suggests it to be, because I don't know if Hecher Sosa is the next big thing that like the UFC hopes him to be. Moving on, we got Bolaji Oki versus Manoel Sousa. I'm going with Manoel Sousa on this card. All right, he's also a Dana White Contender Series guy who fought last year and got his contract. And I think that Sousa should be able to outdog Bolaji Oki over the course of 3 rounds. Bolaji Oki, he looks good at times, but that's against like bottom of the barrel competition or guys that are doing well like at bantamweight right now that fought him on short notice at lightweight. Like, it just seems like Bolaji Oki, unless he puts you away in the 1st round, he doesn't really have much to offer. And Manoel Sousa, while I will say his grappling is a concern, and I don't think he's going to make it to the rankings of the lightweight division by any means. On the feet, he's very tough, and I see him being able to power through Bolaji Oki. Maybe Bolaji Oki cracks him in the 1st round and Manoel Sousa's on skates, but Sousa's tough. Sousa is really tough. And Oki, you would think he has a lot of power in his hands, but he hasn't been able to put away any fighters in the UFC so far. So I'm not really going to trust Bolaji Oki to get a KO in this fight anytime soon, because he hasn't got one in the UFC as of yet. So yeah, Manoel Sousa, I believe, like, maybe he gets cracked at first, but as Bolaji Oki starts to slow down, just like he does in every single one of his other fights, Manoel Sousa should pick up the pace and possibly put away Bolaji Oki in the 2nd or 3rd round. Now, moving on, we got Chris Curtis versus Mytybek Orolbai. Now, I will say, Chris Curtis, I thought of a crafty underdog pick because he is very hard to take down, and that's basically Mytybek Orolbai's game. I mean, Brendan Allen had such a difficult time trying to wrestle Chris Curtis, and also, it's the fact that, like, every time Chris Curtis fights a primary wrestler, he just boxes them up. The problem is that when he's on the feet, as of recently, like, he just doesn't throw that much output. Like, in the Max Griffin fight, both guys just looked incredibly washed and old. Chris Curtis is now 38 years old. He's cutting down to welterweight. And sure, while he was able to stuff down the takedowns of middleweights and just being able to box them up, I don't know if that skill translates to welterweight, because Mytybek Orolbai is a lot more skilled than the middleweights that Chris Curtis has been facing for a very long time. And I wouldn't be shocked if Mytybek Orolbai gets a takedown in this fight, because Orolbai is, again, a lot better than the guys Chris Curtis has been fighting for a majority of his career. But still, though, it is interesting. Maybe the size difference might be too much. You know, Chris Curtis was a former middleweight, now fighting at welterweight, but I just don't like his output on offense. Like, even if this fight were on the feet, like, I would be worried for Mytybek Orolbai, but I don't trust in Chris Curtis to really throw that much, especially as of recently. And even if Chris Curtis is able to put Mytybek Orolbai in danger, like, it's a very common issue with a lot of Eryk Nixick fighters where they have their opponents hurt, but they don't really finish the fight. Man, like, the only person I can count as of recently that's been able to do that is Sean Strickland. And I don't think Chris Curtis is nearly at the skill level of Sean Strickland. So yeah, I'm going to go with Mytybek Orolbai to win this fight via decision. I do want to, part of me does want to pick Chris Curtis via crafty fraud check, but as of recently, I haven't been too impressed with Chris Curtis's game, and he just lets himself get outstruck in a lot of close fights. That's my take on Chris Curtis, even if he is able to stuff the takedowns of Mytybek Orolbai. And I'm not even completely sure if he can stuff the takedowns of Mytybek Orolbai, because, again, although he's stuffing the takedowns of a lot of stronger middleweights, Mytybek Orolbai is a lot more skilled than the guys that Chris Curtis has been fighting. So yeah, I'm going to go with Mytybek Orolbai to win this via decision. Maybe Chris Curtis wins one round here or there, but again, I just don't trust him to really do enough to separate himself from Mytybek Orolbai, and Mytybek Orolbai will be able to control himself on offense for a majority of this fight. Moving on, we got Brad Tavares versus Eryk Anders, the battle of the washed unks, you know, the fights you see at the cookout with your family. I'm gonna go with Eryk Anders on this one, though. Like, Brad Tavares, he has not been looking good as of recently. He's gotten slimed out way too many times. His only win recently is against Gerald Meerschaert, and Gerald Meerschaert, let's just say he hasn't looked the best in his career recently as well. So I think it's just that two washed unks fought, and Tavares was less washed. But it doesn't change the fact that Brad Tavares is incredibly washed. Now, I will say Eryk Anders is also a washed unk. His only win as of recently is Chris Weidman, which is even worse. But it's just the way Brad Tavares has been looking, especially in his last fight with Robert Brychek. Like, Robert Brychek should not be able to just destroy you for 3 rounds straight. Robert Brychek lost a decision to Ihor Potieria, who has now been cut from the UFC. So I don't think Eryk Anders is completely awful. Like, yes, he got slimed out by Christian Leroy Duncan in, like, the first round, but Christian Leroy Duncan's really good. While he doesn't have the best wrestling, his jiu-jitsu's solid. If the fight goes down to the ground, I will see Brad Tavares struggle a lot. And even on the feet, like, Tavares doesn't offer anything threatening. Eryk Anders, while he's not the most polished striker, he at least has some pop in his shots and can really hurt you if he lands pretty cleanly. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Eryk Anders to get the job done. And I think that Eryk Anders, he's just less washed than Brad Tavares, and I think by the end of this event, Brad Tavares will be cut from the UFC, because at this point, like, I don't know if I can trust Brad Tavares to win any fight in the UFC. You know, this one's a really weird fight to me, because I'm thinking Charles Johnson, but he did get slimed out by Alex Perez 2 months ago, so I'm not sure how the chin will hold up, especially at his age, like 35 years old. This isn't exactly the best turnaround for Charles Johnson on short notice. That being said, though, I do think that Charles Johnson's a better fighter than Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva, while he was able to fraud check Hyun-Sung Park,
they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I don't think Hyun-Sung Park is as good as I thought. And outside of that, Bruno Silva has been a punching bag for a lot of the top contenders in the flyweight division. He's very aggressive and he's very tough, which is a very good points for him. But I just see Charles Johnson being able to keep his range and just pick his shots against Bruno Silva. And it's not like Charles Johnson slows down. If anything, as the fight progresses, it's more likely that Charles Johnson's going to win the fight because Charles Johnson does keep a lot of pressure as the fight progresses. The only part that concerns me is the first round, but I don't think Bruno Silva has the reach like Alex Perez. He doesn't have the slickness in his strikes like an Alex Perez. Perez, in hindsight, he is similar frame to Charles Johnson, and Charles Johnson has struggled with the other flyweights that are relatively similar size to him. Bruno Silva, compared to Charles Johnson, is a midget. He's 5 feet 4 inches tall, and his reach isn't exactly the best here. So yeah, I'm thinking that Bruno Silva, maybe he does well in the first round, but I just don't see it. And also, Charles Johnson, he's good at defending grappling positions. I don't think Bruno Silva is just going to be able to ragdoll Charles Johnson like what he did to Hyun-Sung Park earlier in October. So yeah, I'm going to say that Charles Johnson win this fight. Crafty, veteran decision win. He gets back on track, and I do think that Charles Johnson, unless you're like, a Sumu Darji or like an Alex Perez, or overall just like a tall flyweight with similar reach to him, I do think that Charles Johnson is a very hard stylistic matchup, and you're really gonna have to take the fight to him, and I don't know if Bruno Silva, at the age of 35, coming off a couple of losses, only win as of recently against Hyun-Sung Park. I don't know if Bruno Silva is necessarily the fighter that can take the fight to someone like Charles Johnson really early on in the fight, because I think that Bruno Silva, he's not going to have the reach like Alex Perez to chin Charles Johnson in the first round, like what Alex Perez did earlier this year. I really want to pick Steven Asplund in this fight, but I don't see him winning this, alright? I think that Vitor Petrino is the more skilled heavyweight, which is crazy to say because I don't think Vitor Petrino is all that good. Steven Asplund, on the feet, he's so fun to watch. Volume striker at a heavyweight is very rare. He's very Holloway-esque in my opinion. Maybe at a much lower skill level, but still though, you don't really see that level of output in the heavyweight division. But yeah, I'm still gonna go with Vitor Petrino, however, because of the grappling. Steven Asplund, I've watched his regional fights, he gets taken down way too easily. And sure, he's able to reverse positions against LFA guys. I think Vitor Petrino is a lot better than the LFA guys that Steven Asplund's really fought. And I don't see his grappling really improving drastically within the span of 1 year. I think Vitor Petrino should be able to just out-grapple Steven Asplund. And even on the feet, Petrino does have a lot of power. So I don't think Steven Asplund can just tee off on Petrino at will. I'm going to go with Vitor Petrino to win this fight. Maybe Asplund just volumes him and then just TKOs him in the second round. But that's if the fight progresses and goes to the second and third round. I do think that Vitor Petrino can slow down, but I don't think Vitor Petrino is going to waste time in this fight. He's had a lot of lessons in the UFC. He is going to resort to grappling right from the get-go, considering how questionable Steven Asplund's grappling is. And I think that Vitor Petrino is going to be able to destroy Steven Asplund on the ground. I do hope that I'm wrong with this pick. I do want to see Steven Asplund volume TKO Vitor Petrino. But I think that Vitor Petrino is going to win this fight via grappling and possibly submit Steven Asplund within the first round. Alright, moving on. We got Marwan Rahiki versus Harry Hardwick. I'm picking Marwan Rahiki to win this fight because Rahiki, I think he's very durable. He's very Yuri-esque in the featherweight division, which I am concerned about because he does lack a lot of defense. But the problem is, I don't think Harry Hardwick's all that good. Yes, his debut isn't what we base this off of. He did take the fight against Kaue Fernandez on short notice. And Kaue Fernandez is actually really solid, so it was going to be a very tough battle for Harry Hardwick in the start. But based on what I've seen from Harry Hardwick, even throughout his regional career, he hasn't shown me anything exceptional. His boxing's okay. He can outstrike guys a couple of times. But the problem is he's not really going to test Rahiki's wrestling, which is Rahiki's, glaring weakness. Harry Hardwick is always a guy who loves to throw a lot of strikes. Especially boxing range, that's where he does his best work, but it's not like he's TKOing guys flat. He's just landing a bunch of straight punches, not with a lot of pop. And Hardwick, the only time his jiu-jitsu is used is if his opponent starts to use wrestling takedowns. And it's not like Harry Hardwick really wrestles in the first place to initiate his own grappling. I think that Marwan Rahiki, like, his grappling is suspicious, don't get me wrong. Like, I do think that there are weaknesses in this game, and I'm not sure as of right now if I can pick him to be a ranked contender by any means necessary, but Rahiki, if this fight stands on the feet, which it most likely will because Hardwick rarely shoots any takedowns, if at all, I think that Rahiki is just going to overwhelm Harry Hardwick and just push a ridiculous pace and eventually crack Harry Hardwick with some nasty elbows over the top, maybe get him in the clinch. I can even see Rahiki dropping Harry Hardwick with the overhand right. Like, Rahiki is incredibly difficult to finish. He is a wrecking ball that you have to neutralize either by grappling or just dropping him with an overhand right. And I haven't seen Harry Hardwick really drop someone with an overhand right with the first shot, nor have I really seen Rahiki, like, or anything for Rahiki to worry about in the grappling for Harry Hardwick, unless Rahiki's a dumbass and shoots his own takedown. But yeah, either way though, I'm gonna pick Marwan Rahiki to win first or second round TKO, maybe second round, maybe Harry Hardwick survives, but eventually I see Rahiki just overwhelming Harry Hardwick with a bunch of damaging shots. And Harry Hardwick, unless he develops some great wrestling game, I just don't see him winning this fight. And I'm going to pick Marwan Rahiki to win this fight pretty comfortably. Moving on, we got Andre Fili versus Jose Miguel Delgado. I'm going with Jose Miguel Delgado. I feel like that's the obvious pick here. I just don't think Andre Fili's got it anymore. All right, his only win as of recently is against 40-year-old Cub Swanson, and that fight was a robbery to say the least. I think Andre Fili, he's just not been looking great. You know, getting guillotined by Melquizael Costa, which, fair enough, Melquizael Costa is a very good contender in the featherweight rankings right now, but I've just seen Andre Fili lose way too many times. And sure, Jose Miguel Delgado does have some holes in his game as the fight progresses. I don't think this fight goes past the first round. I think Jose Miguel Delgado is way too dangerous. Andre Fili has been very chinny historically, and Jose Miguel Delgado is a very nasty finisher in the first round. I know Nathaniel Wood was able to survive, but Nathaniel Wood is more in his prime. And I think overall, he has more recoverability than Andre Fili. Whereas Andre Fili, at the age of 35, he is kind of basically a human punching bag at this point. So I'm going to go with Jose Miguel Delgado to finish Andre Fili in the first round. It is interesting, though, because Fili did outstrike Christian Rodriguez 30-27. And Christian Rodriguez is known as the fraud check killer. But I don't know. Christian Rodriguez, like, his style doesn't really work against primary strikers like Andre Fili or Jose Miguel Delgado. Where Christian Rodriguez does his best work is when he's the one just defending on the takedowns and eventually pressuring guys who love to shoot takedowns nonstop and grapple, forcing them to fight on the feet. Whereas Jose Miguel Delgado, he's explosive and he loves to fight on the feet, and I don't think Andre Fili is going to be able to survive the onslaught of Jose Miguel Delgado. So I'm going to go with Jose Miguel Delgado to win this fight, first round knockout, maybe the second round. But either way, Jose Miguel Delgado, I think, is a pretty safe bet to win this fight. Moving on, we got Ion Cutelaba versus Oumar Sy. I really don't want to do this, but I'm going to go with Oumar Sy on this one. Now, I don't think Oumar Sy is all that. I really don't. And maybe I will regret my picks and tell myself that I'm a retard for picking Oumar Sy to win, but I just don't think that Ion Cutelaba's got this one. I don't really trust him. Like, yes, he did knock out Ibo Aslan. Yes, he has a lot of fun fights here and there, but I don't know, man. Like, against a certain level of competition, like, Ion Cutelaba freezes up, and he doesn't really throw that much output. And I think Oumar Sy, although he's not good, he is just outside of the rankings of the light heavyweight division. And at that level, Ion Cutelaba struggles to find his consistent offense. So I'm going to say that Oumar Sy, like, maybe he doesn't get the takedowns, Ion Cutelaba defends them, but on the feet, it's not like Ion Cutelaba's really knocking fools out consistently. And I think Oumar Sy will land the cleaner work. And plus, because Oumar Sy is French, and the UFC love their French contenders, if this is a close fight, I'm going to say that Oumar Sy is going to win this automatically. So I'm going to say that Oumar Sy wins this fight via decision. I'm still not sold on the guy. I wouldn't be shocked if he loses to Ion Cutelaba, but watching Ion Cutelaba fight against guys like Modestas Bukauskas, like, I just don't trust Ion Cutelaba to really throw with heavy output if the fight is close. And I do think that the fight is close, which is why I'm going to pick the Frenchman in Oumar Sy to win this fight, 29-28 decision. Moving on, we got Amanda Lemos versus Jillian Roberson. I'm going with Jillian Roberson on this one because Amanda Lemos, she has lost way too many fights where she's gotten smudged via the grappling. And I think Jillian Roberson is a very solid grappler. All right, maybe not the best. I don't know if she's the best in the strawweight division. But she is consistently submitting fools in the strawweight division. And I don't see Amanda Lemos really being able to break position from these. Like, maybe Lemos survives, right? And she has been able to smudge up contenders like Luan Lucindo, who is pretty good on the feet. But again, Jillian Robertson, she's not going to test it, all right? She's just going to shoot it on the hips, immediately go for a double leg, take down Amanda Lemos, possibly get a submission win. I'm going to say it's going to be a pretty dominant decision where she's just controlling the positions. Amanda Lemos is hard to submit, but I just don't know if Jillian Robertson, I don't know how good she is. I really don't, but I do think that she is better than Amanda Lemos in the grappling, and because, especially in women's MMA, the fights mostly take place on the ground, I'm going to say that Jillian Robertson gets the job done. Maybe second round submission. Maybe second round submission like what Verna Jandaroba did. But either way, Jillian Robertson is clearly the better grappler, and she's going to hold the more dominant positions at least in the exchanges. So yeah, I'm picking Jillian Robertson to win this fight. Moving on to the main event, we got Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos. I think you got to go with Kevin Vallejos on this one. Like, it's really hard to pick Josh Emmett in the year 2026. And don't get me wrong, Josh Emmett, he hasn't necessarily looked bad in his fights, but he's getting a lot older. He's like, 41 years old at this point. And as of recently, Josh Emmett, it feels like he's an open book now. All right, a lot of contenders have been able to figure him out. All Josh Emmett does is throw the overhand right over and over again, and in between that, not much at all, alright? Maybe Josh Emmett shoots in double legs from time to time, but it's not like he can really hold dominant position for long periods of time. And on the feet, I just see Vallejos as the more cleaner striker. Now, I will say, like, if Vallejos gets clipped by the overhand right, that yes, Josh Emmett will win, but that's the problem. Like, everybody knows it's coming. Everybody knows that the only consistent weapon Josh Emmett has is his overhand right. And I've seen Josh Emmett just lose way too many times as of recently. And even the fights that he's winning by decision, like, I feel like he's lost those. Like the Calvin Kattar fight. I thought that Calvin Kattar clearly won that. I thought Dan Ige beat Josh Emmett, but then Josh Emmett was awarded the victory. I just don't find Josh Emmett anything impressive outside of his overhand right. And I think that Kevin Vallejos, you could say he's very inexperienced and young. I think he can game plan around an overhand right. And if he can get game plan around an overhand right, I think it's more than enough to beat Josh Emmett at this point, who's basically washed. He is 41 years old. So yeah, I'm going to go with Kevin Vallejos to get the job done. I don't know if it's by knockout because Josh Emmett is really tough. You know, Topuria couldn't knock him out. And we know how monstrous Topuria is. And Kevin Vallejos has been able to go to a decision a lot. But I do think that Kevin Vallejos, in terms of like how to pick his shots, like he's way better than Josh Emmett. He has a lot more variety in the strikes. And I just think that Kevin Vallejos, over the course of 5 rounds, I don't know how his cardio will hold up, but it's not like Josh Emmett really pushes a crazy pace over the course of 5 rounds. So yeah, I'm going to go with Kevin Vallejos to get the job done. I'm going to say decision. Yeah, I'm going to say bloody decision where Josh Emmett just gets battered because he is tough, but outside of being tough and throwing the overhand right, I don't rate Josh Emmett's skill set overall, which is why I have to go with Kevin Vallejos to win this fight. Alright, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. But otherwise, leave any comments down below who you have winning for all of these fights, as well as any of the fights that you actually care about. Also leave any comments down below for video suggestions you have for me so I can make them. But otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Peace.